Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Head of Sales Diary podcast. Today we have David on the podcast. And before you meet him in person, a few facts. So first, David is the founder of SDR Leaders in the US and EMEA community. From what I've seen, it has more than 8,000 members, SDR Leaders. And this is great. And we're going to speak more about this today. Also, David is helping to build the teams. He's running master classes, playbook sessions, a lot of SDR meetups. I don't know, I was following you, but this year you have been traveling around the globe with the meetups or the SDR leaders. And also, David is very passionate about the future of SDRs in the AI-driven sales world. Is that correct, or have I missed something?
No, you've got everything perfect. Yeah, thanks ever so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. And we will start with the first question of why have you decided to start and build and develop the SDR leaders community?
Yeah, at its essence, our vision is to dictate how the sales development function will look like in 2030. And the reason why is that a lot of leaders, SDR leaders, are living on islands, physically if you're in the UK, but also management wise, and they're not talking to one another. They don't know what they don't know. And there are some incredibly talented leaders who are out there and that want to share their expertise and share their knowledge. And there's also people that have just started their leadership career, and we want to bring them together.
Mhm.
Especially as the sales development function is such a critical component of revenue generation at all businesses. We really want to ensure that we're elevating this role to be this really integral part and this conduit between marketing and sales on generating revenue.
Mhm. And when did you start it? When was the first start date or the first meetup?
Yeah, so we first started. I'm really cool. I don't go out for New Year's. I was walking my dog on in 2023 of New Year's Eve, and I was thinking there isn't a space for SDR leaders in EMEA to really connect with one another. So I thought instead of going partying, I'll create a community. And the goal was if we could help 150 people in a year, that would be success. Um, we had 100 people join the community in 48 hours. And it was like, oh, okay, people actually, this is a need. And we're now at the point where we have 5,000 followers in EMEA. We have 1,000 people in our Slack community. The Slack community is thriving. People are asking questions and getting answers on a daily basis. We've already we did our first in-person meetup in April of last year. And this year we'll have done 46 globally. We're
Oh,
planning,
wow.
yeah, it's a lot. And next year we're planning to do about 60 in-person events and also a conference in America as well.
Hopefully in Belgium. I have been asking you to do this
I know
for
you
quite
have.
a while.
I know you have, and I'm not ignoring you. It's coming. Just give me a bit more time.
Okay. Okay. Speaking about the SDR role, if you had to explain it to a person who doesn't know what the role is, can you give a short, maybe 3 sentences explanation? Who is an SDR not right now?
It's the person converting interest and demand and delivering that to people that are going to close deals. That's at
Mhm.
its essence. Um, we can have incredible marketing engines that are generating interest and generating demand, but there needs to be somebody and someone to convert that. If we want our marketing team to focus on in developing that interest and developing that demand, we want our sales team to convert that into revenue. We need that person in the middle to bring that from one business unit to the other. So that's really at its
Mm.
core what one SDR does.
Can you say that for a person who is only starting his career in sales, SDR is the perfect position?
I'm biased, so yes, I would say that. You you have this. the BDR, the SDR role is one of the only functions in a business where you still have freedom to be creative and to use your superpowers, if you say, to convert that interest and to convert that demand. Meaning you have a goal at the end, but how you get to that goal, you can flourish in the skills and strengths that you have. And it also gives you a great basis of understanding how a business works, how a business functions, without the pressure of having a legal quota of revenue that you have to book per year. So it's a really great learning and development base for new hires.
Mhm. Recently, in one of your posts, you have said that SDR is the hardest job in sales. Like
Yes.
many other positions would doubt it or would challenge the statement. Why do you think so?
Yeah, because you're on the front line. You're at the tip of the spear when it comes to that interest and demand that's been generated by your business. You have It's now about 7 seconds of somebody's attention for you to talk to them, and then after those 7 seconds, you're trying to win another 10 seconds of their attention, and then you're trying to win another 10 seconds. So you have to build trust, rapport, confidence with the person you're talking to at the other end of the line, as about why are they going to take a meeting with this random person that's just called you and out of nowhere. And with other functions, marketing, it's still critical, but you're creating the brand awareness for the on the sales side. When they get hold of you, they kind of know who you are. You've kind of created a piquing of their interest about why to speak to you. They're all also very difficult, but the BDR and the SDR role is that tip of the spear of your brand, um, where rejection is common. And I stand by my post that I did last week.
And how do you think the sales leaders or the SDR leaders can help SDRs to make the job easier?
Yeah, so AI has been a blessing, but it's also been a curse. So what we've seen when I started out as a BDR in 2013, I had a phone, I had Salesforce, and that was it. Um, so I had to learn use cases, I had to learn how to pitch, and then I had minimal amount of technology to help me. Now what we've done is, in trying to really help enable and break through noise, given people more and more technology, but we're kind of missing that human to human piece that is critical for talking talking to people. So the way that I always describe is less is more. Have a lot of the AI technology on the back end, so your
Mhm.
team is just focusing purely on execution. Because when things get tough, when when you're not being able to get through to people, you're going to find the path of least resistance to do something that day. So it might be, oh, I'm just going to create a list on Zoom Info, and that could take you 2 hours. But really, have you been productive? We should be focusing our BDRs and our SDRs on revenue generating activities.
Like taking a look at the AI tools and the way they help us, and at the same time they recurs, and this is something I totally agree with. There is a very big trend right now with AI SDRs. Many large and smaller companies are developing such tools, saying that SDRs will be replaced by AI. What do you think of that?
It's false. It's not going to happen. So um, the long answer is COVID. COVID is something that created a group of people who um, haven't yet come out of it, of where they're insular, they're by themselves, they're lonely. And the pieces that AI SDRs have done originally around email, that kind of more less personal activity, that might have worked more in the COVID time when people are just not around in their offices, but people are screaming out for interaction and for talking to humans. And so that's going to be the winning SDR team is going to be the ones that use AI technology to help give them more context, more info and insights, but then execute it by having a human talk to a human. That's going to be the real winning combination.
But can I like a little bit challenge the statement?
Go
So
ahead.
let's say now, for example, with cold outreach, I'm a very big fan of outreach. I'm doing it myself and everything. There, it's like much harder to get into the inbox of a recipient, like deliverability, spam, and everything. With regard to LinkedIn outreach, it's also becoming tougher. I remember the times when you could send 100 connections per day. Now it's 100 connections per week, and it's getting tougher.
Yeah.
With the cold calling, there is a new, I don't know, like if you've heard about the new functionality when like with the new iPhones, you will be able to see if it's like a spammer or not. So it's becoming a little bit harder to get through the to get through the noise. And do you think that, like, I don't know, companies will say, okay, we don't want to invest into the SDR teams anymore. We're going to have a couple of AI agents to run on the background, but we're going to invest more into ABM, into, I don't know, like more events offline or any other communities
Yep.
or any other channels rather than SDRs. And like the position of an SDR will just vanish.
Yeah, it's a very fair counterpoint. And the one thing I'd say to that though is we've now seen this kind of the data set of companies that removed their human BDR team and implemented AI SDRs. And the consequence of that has been their email domain being blacklisted, that reply rates have plummeted, and that actually pipeline build has vanished because the assumption is going to be that other functions are going to pick up the slack around pipeline build, and it hasn't occurred. So I've heard about it in the last 2 weeks, sorry, I've heard about 3 companies that are now rebuilding their BDR team after getting rid of it all 6 months ago because they've seen this dip in pipeline build. So what does that tell me? That tells me that yes, it is getting a lot harder to engage with people and to get through the noise of generic email. Um, there are ways around, as you said about the iOS showing calls being classed as spam. There are ways of technology that's out there to try and give a bit more context to people when they're being called, um, which would help. But really, you're you're trying to get people's attention, and if you send cold outreach, you're you're not in a position to dictate their attention. It's when they're ready. But it could be something that's important, but
Hmm.
because they've really had a human talk to them about the pain that they're suffering and the consequence of the pain, their attention is like, yeah, I'll do that later. So you're trying to bring it to the forefront for people, um, and make them feel like, yeah, that is actually something that is, oh, that is an itch I can't scratch. I have to talk to you about this. So
Hmm.
I think it's AI is going to help enrich information and give more context, but really you still need to have people to deliver that.
Okay. And speaking about the teams, SDRs, how does a contemporary, modern, sustainable, scalable SDR team look like?
Yeah. So there's a really interesting stat from last year where I'm putting the SDR function into this bucket that 70% of sellers' time is spent on admin tasks. So not revenue generating tasks. So that is list build, so putting stuff into Salesforce, um, researching. And what we need to do as a function is go, right, how can we automate those pieces where we don't have the BDRs doing any account research, any account assignment, um anything that uses up that time, so that then we're giving more time back to our sellers to actually execute the job. Now, what the knock-on effect will be of that is we hire the times of like having a lot of SDRs, like a 1-to-1 ratio or 2-to-1 ratio will end, and will reduce the size of teams because there's a redundancy been factored in because we know that can do a lot of admin, so they're not going to really have a lot of time to do stuff. So if we give them back more time, it means that they'll produce more, and
Mhm.
that means then that we don't really need two people to do one person's job. So we're going to see a leaner SDR to BDR team because of that technology piece coming in place. So the dream scenario is that you start work at 8:30, 9 a.m. and you look at your sales engagement platform, and these are the 50 people that I'm going to engage with today, and this is the reasons why.
Mhm.
And then you execute. Everything else has been done on the back end.
Mhm. And like when you scale the teams and when you organize the teams, do you organize or segment them by the market, by the position? What are the key elements?
Yeah, you have to do the segmentation piece because again, if you think about path of least resistance, if you've got working on enterprise companies, like let's say over 500 million euros, and then you have companies that are less than 500 million, and the probability is that you'll book more in that lower segment because it's easier. There's less people to engage with than if it would be with a higher, uh, higher revenue count. But those smaller accounts, it might not generate the revenue that's needed to hit goals. So you have to have a segmentation of people focusing on on one segment, because again, you don't want a BDR to be calling 200 people engage with 200 people in a day, and then have 10 verticals that they're trying to focus on. So that means you have to memorize 10 pains and implications of pains and how we can help. And then you have the personas and the different levels about what they care about. So you're suddenly building up the amount of things that you're trying to understand in your head. It should be very clear, right? I'm going to be working only on finance for over $X100 million of revenue. And these are the things that I need to become an expert
Hmm.
in.
Hmm. And you also recently, like, I want to talk a little bit about the KPIs and the capabilities of the SDR
Mm.
teams, like how many contact points can they make. But before we go here, also a statement you have made that SDR compensation plans should be based on pipeline generation.
Yes.
Can you elaborate like why and what are the key KPIs or at least like indicators, metrics should be for the SDR teams?
Yeah. If we're thinking that the SDR function is going to be a pipeline for talent for a business, we need the teams to start thinking as if they're internal AEs. And by changing to a pipeline metric versus a number metric of meetings, so to say, is that you're not thinking about volume, you're thinking about quality.
Hmm.
And so we implemented this at a former company of ours, a pipeline number, and it was solving a few things. It was solving the pipeline gap that we were having around new logos and that we wanted to try and generate to help out to show our board that we were scaling and a new logo pipeline dollar is worth more than an existing customer. But also as well, we put in a lot of inspection into all those points because we didn't want just a an AE who's a friend of a BDR to say, yeah, I'll put in 500,000. Like, no, that's fraud. We don't want that.
Hmm.
So we really made sure that the qualification criteria was tight. There was a named account. The qualification criteria is tight. And then the pipeline value that went in, it had to be a quote in the system and it had to be
Hmm.
approved by the sales manager. And that could be like a minimum amount. Like it's not going to get any less than this, just so we have an indication of what the size was. And we made this change and we went from the BDR team in EMEA contributing about 8% of total revenue from our team to when I left, we were forecast to do about 27% of pipeline that was being derived from the BDR team, revenue being derived from the BDR team. So it's a culture switch from leaders thinking about volume. And yeah, we booked 100 meetings. Okay, great. But how many of those are really turning into opportunities, into pipeline, into revenue?
Mhm. But like, how does it work? Just for me, like as a person who's also building the pipeline and everything, how does it work in reality? So let's say an SDR gets a very sophisticated or detailed ICP, and like, how does he work? Does a leader help him to identify where he can find this kind of leads? What in reality, you know?
Yeah. So what we looked at, so it was a named account model. So there was only certain accounts that the person was going with. And then also what we looked at was average deal size from the previous year, and
Mhm.
then created a quota based on the performance of the AE from the previous year. Um, and then had that as kind of their quota number. Um, so we made sure that each number was individual because in Middle East, the pipeline generation was huge compared to what it was in France. So we made sure that the quota was reflected that. Um,
Mm.
and then yeah, because it was named accounts as well, it was priorities for the business. We It meant that all those accounts, those named accounts, had account plans attached to them about why we're going after these accounts.
Mhm.
So it was really trying to create greater visibility within the business about what our real pipeline was, and then also to help cover the gap that we were facing. And it was also then that trickle down effect. So we weren't sandbagging deals, and suddenly, oh, $1 million deal comes in at the last day of the quarter. Well done. Like, no, we know that we have $1 million deal that's expected to come in on the 13th of August, and these are the steps that have been being faced and
Mm.
followed.
Okay. What are the key mistakes usually the SDR or the sales leaders make when they form the SDR teams?
They concentrate too much on inputs, on the amount of dials, amount of emails. We're in 2025 now, where volume doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for about 5, 6 years anyway. And we need leaders to think about outcomes and what the outputs that the team are doing. So in terms of named account meetings booked, in terms of named account pipeline generated, in terms of pipeline contribution to the overall number. If the team isn't performing, then yes, you do have a baseline metrics that you're saying, like, hey, if you to get X, you need to have done all of these things in the back. But really, we want teams to be thinking more strategically and focus on the priorities of the business. So it's really important to start off with, okay, this is our goal. This is the contribution that the BDR team is going to provide, and then measure that.
Mhm. But like, this is a switch from the volume to the quality.
Hmm.
How do sales leaders perceive it?
It's tough. It's tough for them to change
Mhm.
because the the sales function has changed as well. So medic sales methodologies like that, playbook companies, they've really created a more scientific way of selling. It's no longer you go to the golf course, you play a round of golf, and you get a deal at the end of it. There's 12 stakeholders involved in an enterprise level deal on average. Um, you need to map that out. You need to understand who is really your internal champion, who is holding the budget, who's the detractor, who's going to be saying no when maybe they have no influence or power. You need to really start to map that out. So sales has evolved, but also the BDR function has evolved. Um, Too many people watch The Wall of Wall Street and other 1980s or 1990s films about having loads of people on the phone making 100 dials, but people have become more sophisticated. So, and the BDR SDR function has as well. So we really need to make sure that we're educating leaders about this is the reality. It has changed. You need to change with it.
Yeah, you have to get through the noise, and to get
Yes.
through the noise, you have to be creative. You have to be on top of like the value proposition, the person you have, and everything. Okay, and like, is there a difference between the SDR approach and building the SDR teams in Europe and in the US?
Yes. So buyers in Europe are a lot more sophisticated. Um, they There's different cultural pieces around how to engage with people. There's also more privacy rules. with GDPR. Um, in America, you there is still privacy concerns, and you're still combating how to get through the noise. But it's really the difference is the more cultural side of Europe, and how to communicate with people. Um, let's say in Germany, people want to hear you speak High German and have a High German accent. If they hear like me, if I was able to speak German, I would speak it in an English accent. They would know and they wouldn't respect me. Um, so you have to. There's these kind of things that you have to take into account.
Mhm. Okay. Maybe one of the last questions,
Mm.
if you could give heads of sales one advice on how to build their SDR teams, what would it be?
Plan it out. Don't just go.
Mhm.
I'm going to hire a bunch of people and buy a bunch of technology and see what happens. You need to have a strategy in place about what's the impact that you want from this team, the contribution of revenue you want from this team, the cost per lead that you're trying to achieve. And then you can start to build out the function in terms of what's the technology that we need as an infrastructure, then what are the people that we need to help deliver that. So it's building a strategy, building a plan. That's critical.
But when do the teams, what is maybe the size of the company or the sales team when you should say, okay, you need a separate SDR team?
Yeah, great question. It's so if you're founder-led sales, and then you've gone from 0 to 1, then you want to be hiring an AE and then having that kind of AE doing a full cycle. It's when you start to
Mhm.
get to about two, it then becomes pieces around, okay, what is our inbound volume that's come in? Can we work on that? And then if we go from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, and we've hired maybe 2 or 3 AEs, we want them to be focusing on the execution of closing deals. So then that's when you really want to start bringing in a BDR. And even then, when you bring in that BDR SDR, you want that person to be senior. You want them to have done the job previously. You don't want a new person because you're wanting them to be successful. Your kind of second or third hire would be then a more junior person that you can then train.
Mhm. But like, what should be the ratio? So let's say one AE for how many SDRs?
Maximum two, sorry, minimum,
Mm,
yeah, minimum, no, maximum two to one ratio BDR to AE. Um,
mm.
you don't need one to one really, unless it's like tippy top enterprise. Um, uh, you also shouldn't have 5 BDRs working with 2 AEs. That's just too many people. So you can reduce the alignment by bringing in the technology piece.
Okay. So the last question, and it's like the signature question I ask in the end. One bold prediction for the future of SDR teams.
And we will see less entry level SDRs joining directly from school and university, and there'll be more graduate schemes coming in place where talent will come in and experience different functions within the business first. And then after that, a period of time when they've done different rotations, then a decision will be made on do they want to move into sales or marketing or customer success? And then they'll become an SDR. And then with that change, that graduate will have understood the full breadth of the business and understand why this is such an important role, and they'll generate more pipeline and revenue because of that, versus coming in and going, what do I do? And constructing
Rank
on a
free.
number. Yeah. That's what I see is going to happen over the next few years.
Okay, sounds great and exciting. Thank you very much for coming to the podcast today. And I do hope to meet you in person when there's
Yes.
SDR leaders meetup somewhere in Belgium. I'm happy to help you organize it and to attract more SDR leaders. Thanks again, and please follow David on LinkedIn for more tips how to grow the greatest teams. Bye.